Hello and welcome to my 50th video on the channel. Wait, it says 54 on the playlist? But how? Oh, wait. So today I hope will be November 13th, which is the 20th anniversary of the 40th anniversary story, Scream the Shalka. Yeah, it's weird how everybody remembers the EastEnders crossover more than this one. But anyways, I think it's time we dust off this old webcast for its birthday to see if it stands tall. And to also comment about the unmade stories of this Doctor, and the only other story that he ever had, being Feast of the Stone. So the origin of Scream started at the tail end of 2002, when the online Doctor Who team at BBC started prepping for the upcoming 40th anniversary. They had some mild success over the past couple of years with the prior webcasts, Death Comes to Time, Real Time, and Charlotte 2003. This time they wanted to do a new Doctor and a new era, since at this point the show was just never coming back. Originally marked up as a series of 3 4-part stories, the budget decreased to only allow one 6-part story to be made. This story then went down to writer Paul Cornell, who wrote Scream the Shalka, originally entitled Servants of the Shalka Law. After many months of a tireless and dragging production, the story was able to be released just after the announcement of Russell was going to bring back the show. In this story, we have the Doctor landing in Lancashire, where he meets the locals, including Alison Cheney. He finds out that the Shalka have been making themselves comfortable underneath the surface. So, throughout the story, we have the usual local Earth invasion plot that many stories, such as Partners in Crime. But when you go into it, there's more than just that. The Earth invasion plot that you see from the outside becomes one single layer in a multi-layered story, with domestic horror, Underground Legion, and even Earthbound Unit. However, unlike a stuff story such as Hyde, which had too much to put into its short time frame, this story allows every element to breathe as it can. The domestic horror is only in the first 2 parts, before it moves into a Underground Legion A plot and an Earthbound Unit B plot. Then finally, in its last 3 parts, it goes for the Earth invasion angle at its end point for the rest of the story. I'd probably say the Earthbound Unit B plot would be the weakest of the 4 plots involved, but I think it still works as it allows the Doctor to cross over from domestic horror to the Underground Legion, and there are still great moments involved. Only, I wish it was fleshed out like the other 3, because it would have given some of the unit soldiers involved a lot more personality than just being soldiers.
What are you? Mildly annoyed.
We have a brand new Doctor at the helm in the form of Richard E. Grant, and I think probably one of the best first impressions that you could have for a Doctor. He starts off being more closed off and refusing to help, but thanks to the scenes of Alison early in the story, he starts to open up a lot more. Like by the time we come to the part where we see him and Alison taken off at the end, it feels like we finally get to see the full Doctor in his prime. In a way, you can sort of treat the Doctor in the story like he's going through a post-regeneration process, and by the end of the story, he's able to form his full self. Plus, the performance from Richard E. Grant is just pitch perfect, really. He does well with the quieter moments at the beginning of the story, and I'd even say he still does well with the louder moments towards the end of the story as well. I think all around he was a perfect choice for a brand new Doctor, and had Christopher Eccleston not been available for the new series, I really could have seen him as a true 9th Doctor.
I'm not going to sacrifice myself for Lanet. It's the dullest place in the universe.
Alison is the one who fills the companion role in the story. She makes a really good first impression by being the one in these weirder situations to comment on the obvious. Like, she can see the missing pieces of the puzzle and wants to make sure that everybody else can see them, so that they can fix them. You can also tell that she wants to free herself from the confines of everyday life, and with the events of this invasion, she slowly but surely turns away from the everyday life of Jo to the more action-packed and deadly life of the Doctor. And I think that's a great character beat.
I am the master, and you will...
Evening.
Come to like me when you get to know me.
The Master usually doesn't play a part as an associate of the Doctor, unless you count Big Finish and Series 10 finale. So I probably have to say this is probably my favourite incarnation of this idea. Not only is he a robot now stuck to the TARDIS, but he's also a Master who sort of lives up to the good friends angle that the Doctor mentions. But he makes sure to remind the Doctor that there are limits to what he can do. I really like the small Shalka worms that travel around in the story. They have that Slovene edge to them, where their appearance may look cute, but what they do to everyone else is very deadly, such as the deadly screeches that they do to stop the characters from moving. They don't speak at all, which I think works for the smaller Shalka creatures, because the less they talk, the more they seem like a deadlier presence to the rest of the characters. But to be honest, I think I actually prefer the character of Shalka Prime to the smaller Shalka characters. From the scenes that we see her in, she's calculating but confrontational, but she also manages to still keep a good presence throughout. And I think it also shows how much a powerful leader can do to herself when her soldiers almost take over the planet, but she can still outwit the Doctor at the same time because of his weakness to the caring of humans. I am a little disappointed that she later evolves into a bigger monster near the end of the story, because I prefer her small original design, as the voice fit perfectly with it compared to the bigger design. I think it would have lessened the character if she lost her voice in the new design, and made it less of an evolution and more of a de-evolution. Of all the scenes I can choose for my favourite, I'd have to choose the scene in the middle of part 4, where the Doctor, after being pushed by the Shalka and their queen, now tumbles to the bottom of a wormhole as he heads towards a black hole. I think this is essentially this incarnation of the Doctor in a nutshell. We see him at multiple stages of emotions, whether it be his supposed last message, before he complains to the TARDIS his phone's low battery, which is one of my favourite jokes of this episode, to the astonishment that he's still got a way out. It's a real minute that shows in even some situations, there's always a way out, even if you think all possibilities have been covered. One thing I haven't mentioned so far is the soundtrack, which was done by Russell Stone, who did the soundtrack to my favourite 8th Doctor Big Finish story, Scherzo. So we already have a master of music on our hands here. Now my thoughts on this soundtrack for Scream the Shalka is that it's very atmospheric, but not in the same way that Sega Nakanola's soundtracks for the Druid era. They have a sense of making you feel for the scene, such as the early track in the pub having this eerie sound to it, or the later military organised tracks where the Doctor and Una are in the same room, making it feel like the sounds of footsteps to a war that's just begun. Now the theme, I just love it. It's one of those mixes that really jumps out at you. It's got that spooky feeling to it, but it also has that sense of celebrating the past with the Derbyshire motif in the background, but more of a David Arnold composition in the foreground. And it really complements the titles as well, which this time went for a more evolved version of the Pertwee titles. So, Scream. It's a fantastic story which has a great new Doctor and a very excellent supporting cast. Fantastic writing by Paul Cornell and some great animation work for a webcast that was broadcast in 2003. It's no wonder that they decided to dig this out for DVD. And I think anyone who's a Doctor Who fan should really dig this out for a rewatch. Now yes, even this Doctor had some unmade stories in his run. Of course we have the 2 stories that disappeared during Shalka's pre-production phase, but unfortunately we don't have the plans for those. So we'll take a look at the one that we do have plans for. Here we have Blood of the Robots, which is supposed to be penned by Simon Clarke, a novelist behind the vampiric novels, and would later write the Dalek Factor for Telos Publishing. His story would have had the Doctor arriving in a world where there would have been intelligent and sensitive robots that would have been abandoned by their human owners. Ruthless salvage squads would have hunted the robots in order to make room for the human settlers, forced to migrate from their dangerously overcrowded home planet. A detailed story breakdown was penned by Clarke, and 3 episodes had been written before the story was shelved due to webcast plans being shelved once the incoming return of Russell T Davies changed a lot of things with the Doctor's production at the time. And I think that's a real shame, because I feel like the story would have been a great follow-up to Shalka, sort of a business as usual with a twist. It probably would have done great wonders to expand the character relationships of the Doctor, Alison and the Master, so I think it would have been a great adventure if fully realised. Additionally, according to the Black Archive Scream the Shalka book released in 2017, the first season 8th Doctor adventure story, Immortal Beloved, written by Jonathan Clements, who also wrote Brave New Town for the same range, originally wrote the story as a story for the Shalka Doctor before being rewritten to fit the 8th Doctor. So yeah, that's something you might not know. Yes, he actually got a continuation in a story written for the BBC Cult website in 2004 in a section about vampires. Replacing Paul Cornell as Cavan Scott and Mark Wright, writers for Big Finish with the Project miniseries, Project Twilight and Project Lazarus. In this story, we have the Doctor, Alison and the Master landed in some normal-looking caverns. Unfortunately to them, the cave is home to a psychic vampire, and it's here to drain the 3 of them of their entire lives. So this time we have a more darker and emotional story than Shalka. It's in more of the lines of a Midnight or God complex in this series. The fact that we only have these 3 characters along with the vampire entity shows how much that Cavan and Mark wanted to do to expand these characters from their initial story, and how, if given the chance to, this would have been a great episode to see what this cast really would have been like if they had the proper series. If you like this Doctor in Scream, you like him here. I like his multitasking in the story, like he can get caught up in a distraction, such as making a speech at a party, but then also realise that something is wrong at the same time. It shows his ingenuity and that he can also be on the ball at the same time. But I do also like how they make you think that the Doctor would actually leave Alison, well, dead, but then show you a scene later making sure that he'd nurse her back to health. In a way, it keeps that dual identity that we saw in Shalka, the closed-off person who wanted to deal with the menace, but also the person who wanted to care for the humans and would defend them to their last breath. Alison really has her faith tested in the story with her venture in the Doctor. Not only she put through some real hardships by having to relive a painful memory, one of her being at her nan's side in hospital, but it's a story where, for a brief moment, she dies. It's something that not many companions get to do early on in their run to deal with. In other cases, this would be the point where the companion would ask to leave for their own safety, but this time, Alison doesn't. And when she nurses back to health, she does talk to the Doctor about this, and through this conversation, she's able to actually ask a really damning question that even silences the Doctor. Unlike the other two in this main case, the Master really doesn't get to do much in this adventure compared to the last, but what I'm glad that he does bring is his personality. He has his wit with the Doctor, which also includes his intelligence and know-it-all personality, but also his compassion and caring attitude with Alison, even though he doesn't want to show it in public like the Doctor does, because he has to uphold his reputation. But he will do when Alison is there, because he really has shown that he cares for her. This time we have a vampire entity which cannot speak, but can use his power to provide victims with memories that can make them weak enough so he can feed on them. Now, we've had many monsters that can do the same power in the show already, but I think this one works even better for two reasons. One, we don't know what it looks like, so you have to imagine the monster. And two, it works with your past rather than using recent memories or dreams to snare its victims, which I think makes it all the more spookier because it means that you have to now forget some painful memories so this entity won't have a chance to use them, which is really rather haunting and powerful because you have to forget that death in your family or a funeral just so you have a better chance of surviving this monster. But to conclude, Feast is a great continuation for this unloved incarnation, providing the reader with more character development and moments, especially for Alison and the Master. The Monster is a really good new take on such an old idea, and I think it's a great read for anybody who liked this Doctor and his crew at the end of Shalka and really wanted more from them. Seriously, give it a read if you can. So, there you go, 2 stories from an overlooked Doctor which I can recommend to anyone. Am I disappointed that we got the revival of this? Kind of, because it shut down a lot of good ideas for this brand new Doctor, which I think people would have been down for. I'm also a bit disappointed that Big Finish haven't done anything with this Doctor either, because they've been able to get so many good people for the great performances in their range of audios. But I think it's something that you have to learn to live with. I hope you enjoyed this video. Yeah, this 50th one. I don't know how that happened, but I'll be back in a couple of days to celebrate another favourite story of mine, so stay tuned for that. But, as always, I thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you, my friends.